it's me, Bo, back once again on the Film Scene Investigation channel. Thank you so much for checking out this video. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the 2004 erotic drama, Mamir. So I came across this movie when it was recommended to me on the IMDb website. And what stuck out to me was the fact that the actress Isabelle Huppert was in the lead role. She's an interesting actress, and I've admired her work for some years now. So seeing her, popping up in this movie, I was intrigued to see what she would, bring to the table. Just before we get into this erotic drama, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, Mamir from 2004 was written and directed by the French filmmaker Christophe Honoré and was based on the 1966 novel by author Georges Bataille. Now, this movie was shot on location in Gran Canaria, a place I've actually visited. I went on holiday there maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a beautiful place. And this movie definitely captured that beauty as well. So plot-wise, Mamir followed the character Pierre, a adolescent teenager who was played by actor Louis Garrel. He was a kid who was brought up by his grandmother and never saw much of his parents. It was obvious from the start that Pierre came from this dysfunctional family, and he would go on to, resent his parents for abandoning him. But the reason Pierre was sent away as a child wasn't because his parents didn't want him. In fact, it was actually because his mother, played by actress Isabelle Huppert, was a prostitute. The family were wealthy. They didn't need to do this for the money. It was simply down to the fact that Helen, the mother, was doing it to satisfy her desires. What was even more strange was the fact that the father, he knew all about it, and he actually had his own mistresses as well. So, to summarize, Pierre came from a family of sexual deviants who basically didn't want a child getting in the way of their, sexual escapades. Anyways, the dad ended up getting killed off pretty early on, and that left Helen and Pierre together to, basically pick up the pieces. Helen didn't really seem all that bothered about the death of her husband. She didn't really show that much emotion at all. And from that, I got the impression that clearly it was a strained marriage. Pierre and his mother grew closer together through the death of the father. One night they went out drinking together, and Helen, came clean about her and her prostitution. In her eyes, she felt it was time to tell Pierre the truth behind why he was sent away as a child. Pierre was obviously upset and confused over this revelation about his mother. And to be honest, he didn't really know how to take it. The death in the family had brought Pierre and his mother closer. Now they were actually forming a relationship, something that Pierre had wanted for all those years. But on the flip side, he obviously had an issue with his mother's deviant behavior. You had to feel sorry for the guy. I mean, he had been basically lied to his whole life, living under these false pretenses. It was information overload. If the kid didn't already have issues, he definitely had issues now. Things then took a strange turn when the mother decided to set her son up romantically with another prostitute called Ria. I guess now that Helen's true identity had been revealed, she felt, hey, everything's out in the open, and it was time to introduce her own son into her sordid world. This was the point in the movie where the story's dark nature really came to the surface, because ultimately Helen was grooming her 17-year-old son. You have to remember that Pierre was just a confused 17-year-old adolescent kid who, his whole life, all he wanted was to have a relationship with his parents. His father was now dead, and there his mother was, open arms, wanting to look after him. Yeah, it was these weird mind games. He didn't know what he was actually getting himself into. What about the scene where Rhea, Helen, and her son went out at night to have a drink? Pierre ended up getting drunk and crashing out, and Rhea and Helen saw the perfect opportunity to take advantage. The guy was wasted, and, he was only 17, so of course, most 17-year-olds can't handle their alcohol, so no wonder he ended up in the state he was. But to see Rhea then come over, undress him, and then have sex with Pierre in the middle of the street while his mum watched, that was a crazy visual for sure. The sequence was handled kind of tongue-in-cheek, as if it was just kind of, outrageous. But we shouldn't forget that ultimately it was perverted. Rhea was a prostitute, he was a 17-year-old kid, and his mother was watching the whole time. That was just fucking strange. It was obvious that Helen clearly got some sexual kick, some satisfaction out of seeing all this degenerate behaviour. But while Helen certainly enjoyed what she saw, that moment, seeing her son having sex, that pushed Helen over the edge. She suddenly made an exit. She left town and left the house to her son. The reason she made this quick, abrupt exit was down to the fact that she had finally come to the realization that she actually did want to sleep with her son. Seeing Rhea having sex with Pierre only made Helen, the mother, desire her own son even more. Yes, she knew it was wrong, and so she decided to suppress these dark feelings by leaving town, getting away, and giving her and her son some space. I guess the mother thought that she could suppress these sexual frustrations, but, ultimately that didn't work. Now, I have to talk about the ending of the movie here, as what took place was indeed very disturbing. So we saw Helen return to the house eventually after a few weeks, and Pierre was very happy to see her. While his mother had been away, Pierre had ended up starting a relationship with a girl called Hansi, who was the same age as him. This was the type of relationship the guy should have been having, an appropriate partner, someone his own age, but eventually his own twisted and confused sexual feelings for his mother came to the surface. Once reunited, they both knew that they could no longer suppress their sickening sexual desires, and so we saw them engage in some, perverse sexual activity together. It was a strange moment for sure. I guess, as a viewer, you could see it coming, but you certainly didn't want to see it coming. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they were in this room. It was very dark, dimly lit, and you basically saw Helen, the mother, give her son a handjob. Luckily, we didn't see any close-ups or anything like that. And then suddenly Helen grabbed this scalpel that she had and she slit her own throat, killing her instantly. It was already shocking, seeing that visual of, the incest, but yeah, to then suddenly see her, commit suicide like she did, I guess you'd have to see it as the character's way of, I don't know, like a final act of resistance maybe, trying to stop herself from going through and sleeping with her son. I'm glad we didn't see any, full intercourse between the two. I think that would have been too much, a line would, would have been crossed. So yeah, it was what it was. It was still disturbing to say the least. But I guess with Helen's suicide, as I said, it was the character's way of maybe trying to redeem themselves, to try and look at it in a more positive light. I guess you could say that Helen, deep down she knew it was wrong and she didn't want to go through with it, and more importantly, she didn't want to live with the shame. As for Pierre, you had to feel sympathy for the character because clearly he had some psychological issues. He never had a proper upbringing, never was able to develop a proper relationship with both his parents. You had the fact that his dad then suddenly died, and then on top of that, his mother was grooming him. I mean, no wonder the kid turned out the way he did. I mean, how about the final scene where we saw Pierre go and visit his mother's dead body in the chapel? At first, he's upset and he's grieving, but then suddenly he tries to masturbate before getting chucked out. I mean, yeah, that is not normal, And as I said, as I say it now, it's humorous, But yeah, like ultimately, that was not a normal reaction. And like the earlier scene with Ria and Pierre, this final sequence was kind of played for laughs. I think the filmmakers wanted to end the movie in this kind of somewhat strange but upbeat, kooky, zany kind of way. But regardless, Pierre was a seriously deranged young man, all thanks to his parents' lifestyle. It's safe to say that Mamir did not shy away from depicting such sickening behaviour on screen. The film challenged the traditional social norms that we've all, become accustomed to. And so for that, I give the filmmakers some credit. Movies with harsh subject matters sometimes lean into more exploitation, but with Mamir, I thought, all things considered, it was, handled pretty carefully. I didn't get the feeling that the filmmakers were trying to push incest on its audience, as if it was something that's acceptable, because of course it isn't. But this narrative did serve as a way for the film to explore such themes as repression and perversion. When it comes to the performances, I thought the actress Isabelle Huppert was the best part of the movie, and she really did show her strengths as an actress. You could definitely sense the inner turmoil that Helen was experiencing, not wanting to indulge in these sick sexual fantasies. I also have to give the actress credit for showing bravery and taking on such a controversial character, as most actors out there would shy away from such a provocative role. So yeah, good job on her. She's definitely fearless. Besides the interesting concept and the strong performance by Isabelle Huppert, one of the film's major strengths was its cinematography. The French cinematographer Helen did a wonderful job capturing some brilliant visuals, and it really was in stark contrast to the dark narrative. I always appreciate when filmmakers take the time to add some visually appealing shots to their work, as it definitely assists with the storytelling. And so, dislikes for Mamir from 2004. My biggest dislike for the film would have to be its pacing, especially in the latter half. Now, going into this movie, I fully expected it to be a slow burn because a lot of, these types of movies, these erotic dramas, they tend to be slow. And as it was, Mamir, once again, was a very slow-paced film. For the most part, that was okay because it allowed the audience to, basically dwell in the discomfort of the story. It's just once the Hansi character, who was played by Emma de Koones, came in and, started a relationship with Pierre, I did start to get a little bit restless. I just wasn't all that interested in, the adventures of Pierre and what he was getting up to. I think the absence of Isabelle Huppert and her character Helen, it definitely made things seem less interesting for sure. Yeah, I understand what the filmmakers were going for, taking the two characters, pulling them apart, and eventually having that reunion at the end. But I just found it pretty boring. I mean, this may have been Pierre's story, but clearly Helen, that character was far more interesting. I just wish it could have been handled better. I mean, it's a well-made movie, don't get me wrong, but there was parts in it that just lingered on unnecessarily in my eyes. And I definitely could have trimmed at least 5 to 10 minutes off the movie and it, probably would have played a lot better. And so, ratings for Mamir from 2004. I'm going to be rating this movie a 3.5 out of 10. Mamir was certainly a unique movie experience with this exploration into ancestral relationships. It certainly challenged the viewer to confront their own thoughts and feelings on the subject. When cinema does this, it provokes an internal debate within, and with Mamir, because it did that, it gives it a lot more significant value. As I've said already, Isabelle Huppert was brilliant in the role of Helen, the mother who had these dark desires for her son. She really held the whole film together, and without her, to be brutally honest, would have been a pretty terrible film. I should also mention that when I watched this movie, Mamir, for the first time, it did remind me of the movie Y Tu Mama Tambien from 2001. There were, of course, some similarities with, an adolescent teen exploring their sexuality with an older woman. So certainly if you like that movie, then you'll definitely like Mamir. If you've seen this erotic drama, Mamir, from 2004, then please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. For those who haven't, I can't really recommend it. Overall, I thought it was a pretty ambitious movie, and I respect the filmmaker Christophe Honoré for producing such a film, but it's just very polarizing, and I can't say it's essential viewing. And well, that's all from me today, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed my review of Mamir from 2004. I'll be back, of course, next week, as always, with another cult movie review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. A big thank you to all my current subscribers out there. I really appreciate you guys. And of course, take care.